Hey guys, Derek Blue Collar Chess. In today's video, I want to show you a couple of positions. This is the first one we're going to look at. I'm going to show you the second one real quick. So this is the second one. All right, so I'm going to show you how to win this. And so the question you want to ask yourself is how should white take back? So it's white to move. How should white take back the pawn? Should he take with the H pawn or take with the king, and why? Okay, so before we do that, we're going to look at chapter 3 here, which is I want to show you why this is a draw. So the black king here, to draw this position, well, to lose this position, he would have to play something like king f7. Okay, so now that's a complete loss. All right, so now the rook goes there, and if you go here with your king, you're going to push the pawn and queen. He's got to take the queen. You're going to take back with your rook, so it'll be a rook and a king versus king. If instead of doing that, so instead of doing that, he takes the pawn, you're going to take your rook, you're going to check him, and again, it's going to be a rook and a king versus a king. So the technique as black here to draw this position is the king can't move from the g7 or h7 squares. This is where you just go back and forth. If you don't move from those two squares, the rook can't do anything. Okay, so what does your rook and what does white's king do? Okay, so that would be the question, right? So after king g3, we'll just say, I don't know. We'll just say rook here. You don't need to move your king. So we'll bring your king in, check here. Now, rook c5 check would be a mistake because it allows you to hit the rook and protect the pawn at the same time. So you're just going to bring your rook back to c2, okay? So if you look at this position, the white rook still can't move. Why? So say the white rook goes here. Then you just take, right? Okay, so it's rook versus rook. So that's going to be a draw. So obviously you can't do that. So now the king comes to protect the pawn. Okay. So as soon as this happens, that rook can move now. And basically, white can build like a Lucina. So you have to immediately start checking. So that's all you have to do. And he cannot get away from the checks. So even in this position, you don't even have to do anything. You just go back to rook c2. You're just constantly hitting that pawn, okay? And he goes back here, you check him again. He goes here, you check him. He goes there, you check him. You know, so you just keep checking him. He has no place to go. And pretty soon it's going to be a draw, right? So you just got to remember in this position you can't move your king from G7 or H7. So it kind of begs the question needs to be asked then, how would you win this position? So if you had a pawn on the F file, you could keep the king from going to G7, right? So that's pretty much the only way. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to go back to this position. So I've given you a big hit, all right? So what is the best way to win this position? Pause it, take a look at it. I'm going to show you the wrong way first. So the one that loses, or draws rather, is going to be h takes g3. Now, the only reason why that draws is because you have this move, g4, or black has that move. So basically, he's forcing the trade of the f-pawn. So no matter what white does, you're going to trade the f-pawn. If white wins the pawn, and now has two pawns, but has this double pawn, right? He can never kick this king from the g7 square. So he just can't. He cannot make any headway. I will show you a little bit there. I'll just show you a little bit. Like say, we'll go king h7, king g2, king g7, king f3, and honestly, you can just start checking here. I would say here, and then here. Again, he's trying to get to this square. Okay, So when he does that, you just bring your rook there, or wherever on the C file. As soon as he touches that, check. If he goes here, you can either go back or you can check him on. Wait, no, rook e3 is a rook e3 does not win actually. Yeah, so you have to go back to c3 in that position. Now I'll show you why really quick. So if you were to check him there, he doesn't have this square to go to now. So black is losing now because you're going to be able to queen that pawn because you can move the rook. Okay, so you see that you play rook c3 again. Nothing you can do. Say he pushes that pawn, you're going to play something like rook c2. So really, I should have just brought the rook all the way back. It's probably better practice to do that. Here, let's say king d6. Again, you immediately have to check him. You can't do anything else. So he goes here, and you can play rook e2. He goes there. You got to check him. There, you got to check him. I would just keep checking him at this point. He touches the pawn. You check him. He goes there. Now you can go back to rook c2, and everything is good, right? So these two pawns don't do anything. Nothing, because they can never kick your king. All right. So now let's go back to the very beginning. So we know now that we need the f pawn to keep the king from going to g7, or to kick the king from g7, right? So king takes the pawn. And now, let's see, what's probably the best move here? I don't think it really matters. Let's just start shuffling with the king. King h7. H4. I like h4 here. There's other moves, and pretty much any move wins, but I like h4. So the thing is, so say he takes, right? You know, you would think that'd be fine, but then the king just hides here. And believe it or not, so the problem is the rook can never take this pawn. So now you can take h4 because he can't take the pawn with a check. So if he can't take the pawn with a check, that rook can slide over, and we'll be able to promote the pawn. So say he doesn't pin the pawn, and say he does just this, right? So here, believe it or not, you can actually play f4. Because again, he can't take the pawn. If he takes the pawn, you're going to do, I don't know, rook d8 or a8 or something. D8. I think rook d8 works fine. And then, yeah, he goes back to rook to c4. You push the pawn, queen. Okay. So now he's going to say rook c3 check. All right. King takes the pawn now. Say rook c4. Let's say king goes to g5, I guess. Rook c5 check, f5, and then king h7. Can you just play king f6 maybe here? Check. Check, check. Yeah, I don't see why you can't play king f. Why can't you play king f6 here? Yeah, you can. Okay. I'd probably play this. Then if something like rook c1. Geez, honestly, I would just play rook to e8. And this has got to be winning, right? Rook to c6. Rook to c6. Oh, no, rook to c6. And then rook to e6. So if the rook ever takes that pawn, yeah. So this is winning too for white, right? So you use your king. But let's say you don't use your king. And here, you play that move. Let's say king f4. And then, let's say rook to c2. And let's just say f6 there, right? So that keeps the king from going to f7. So let's see what happens if the rook goes to c3. Now, let's see here. Yeah, so now you're just going to push, yeah. So there you're just going to start pushing the pawn now, right? So let's say he goes to rook to c1. Again, I think you just push the pawn. No, oh no, you play rook e8 there. Yep, you do that because if he takes the pawn, you're going to check him there. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's see if we can follow this up. So rook takes c7, and then rook e7 check, king g6. So rook versus king there. We're gonna play rook f1 check. We're gonna play king g4. And then rook g1 check, and then king f5, and then here, and here. And no matter what black does, he's lost. So, so again, the key takeaways to remember in this position is that if you have two pawns against a rook and a king, it has to be the third file pawn. Okay. Yeah, so this is Derek with Blue Collar Chess. I hope you liked this video. I hope this was useful information for you. And yeah, good luck playing chess, guys. Talk to you guys later.